Alright guys, 9/11 truth has never gone away, but I haven't personally been down to Ground Zero since 2007, and everything has changed completely, really. And people are still down here spreading the truth about Building 7, about 9/11 truth, and we're talking to Scott. How have things changed? You've been down here a long time. You were talking about how people are ready to listen now.
Yeah, that's the point. I think people are really ready. They know something's wrong in the world. They can't put their finger on it. So they'll come up and they'll look at this information. They'll take a brochure. And nowadays, people come up and ask us for a brochure, which is great. They want to know the information. And they come up and they take a look. We give them a little talk. We tell them about Building 7. And most people don't even know about Building 7. And I try to explain to them, 14 years have gone by and you don't know about the third tower to come down that day. And then I show them a video on my iPhone. And I show them how fast and how straight it came down. And I explain to them, you know, that this is free fall acceleration and you can't get that without a controlled demolition. So you've got a serious problem here. And so, you know, I talk about the towers, and I try to explain to them that, you know, jet fuel didn't do this, and jet planes can't do this. And I try to tell them, you know, a plane and jet fuel compared to a tower like this is like half my hand compared to my body. It's not a lot of jet, and it's not a lot of jet fuel. And most of that jet fuel was burned off within 15 minutes after the planes hit the towers. And then you saw two buildings with black and gray smoke with very little fire. And then all of a sudden, the South Tower is destroyed, where most of the material turns to dust. So how does that happen? People need to find out that there was a bathtub that enclosed the towers to keep out the Hudson River, that if both these towers came down with all their weight and force, it would have broke that bathtub, would have flooded this area, and the subways would have been flooded. It would have destroyed this area. But whoever did this knew that they needed to turn the towers into dust, and they didn't.
Are a lot of people also feeling like that was a long time ago and what does it matter now? I mean,
yeah, what can we do about it now? You know, yeah, it's too long. But I try to make them realize that, you know, the people who did this are still out there doing whatever they want to do.
Yeah, this could happen again. I mean,
well, the politics of it is up for debate. There's a lot, but it's just endless rabbit holes, and everything is just compromise and collusion and corruption. And but I mean, as far as a movement, I have not been as involved as I had been, but a lot of it became very frictious, and everybody got into their arguments and their little angles of it, and something happened to it.
Yes.
I don't know exactly how that worked out, but somebody got people to turn away, you know, even people who were focused on this.
Yes.
And it's very disappointing because it was really headed somewhere, I felt like. I mean, down in 2007, there were hundreds, probably even 1,000 people in the streets here on that issue specifically, and networked all across the country and all across the internet.
I think one of the biggest problems back then was that we said it was an inside job, and that was too much for people to handle.
Yeah.
We were pointing a finger before we knew exactly what happened. So I think the point here is that you have to understand, how did those towers come down? First you have to find out what happened.
Just scale it back.
Before you start pointing a finger.
Well, yeah.
You know, and saying that it was an inside job, even though we all kind of say, you know, there's got to be something to that.
Yeah.
It was too much for people to handle. How could they say that about our government? There's no way that could be true. So it was just, that's why people came and they got so annoyed at us because they love this country. How could you say something against this country? It's not a question of saying it against the country. We're saying it against certain factions of the country that were into this and were involved. Actually, you know, somebody had to know about this. You know, how high a level it went, I think it went way above government. way above.
I think he's right too.
You know, I think the government was told, hey, listen, there's going to be an event happening, and we're going to take down the towers, and you guys have to put it together and make 19 terrorists look like they did it. But we'll bring down the towers for you. You just got to make sure that the 19 terrorists.
Have you seen the BBC segment where the woman announces the tower's fallen and it's behind her as she's speaking?
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
You know, I've shown that to people, and I thought that was just like...
This is a slam dunk, in my opinion. I don't know how you could say anything else.
But people still feel like, it's cognitive dissonance. You know, people can't get around the idea, that this could be what we're talking about.
I mean, I think that's what did it for me. That and watching the buildings in slow motion when they fall, you can clearly see charges going off. You can clearly see that. Or something. You could see something, whatever that is.
Sure. All the buildings came down way too fast.
Yeah.
And when you hear the explanations from architects and engineers, then you kind of fit it in. I mean, I went to college and I took all the 101 science courses. I didn't take physics. All things I not in high school and not in college. And so I learned my physics from 9/11. And I understood about free fall. And I read Stephen Jones's paper. When that came out, it was on the internet. And they, he said, oh, Building 7 was a controlled demolition. I said, how could that be? That's impossible. So I read his paper, and I said, oh my God. And I saw the video of Building 7, and I said, uh-oh. And I realized we have a serious problem here. So I started looking into this, and I said, whoa, way too much.
And do you remember that day?
Yeah, I was here in the city.
You were?
Yeah, and I was listening to Howard Stern, and he got very serious. And he said, a plane hit the building, and all of a sudden I stopped and I could look, and I saw it was on fire. I mean, during that time, I was gone home. Let's go get them, I didn't know. And then in 2006, all of a sudden, my brain
unlocked. I think for me, it was that day when I saw the Pentagon wreck. I was like, that doesn't look like a hole that would fit a whole plane into at all. And
there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. Even though if you look at the pictures of the Pentagon, you see that the floors have all collapsed. That didn't happen immediately. It wasn't until almost about 45 minutes later that the structure was weakened enough that all of the floors collapsed.
The angles seemed all wrong to me, and I didn't take physics in college either. I skipped that one for astronomy, so I'm like you. I just knew it was wrong, though. And then by the time we got to the Shanksville site,
it was actually very quiet. Nothing going on down there, no smoke, no fire, just a couple of people walking around. They look like part of the NTSB crew walking around looking at the pieces.
How big would you say that hole was?
From my estimates, I would guess it was probably about 20 to 15 feet.
That one made no sense to me. I mean, I've seen plane wreck footage where a plane goes down in the ocean and it just crumbles apart. This plane was somehow able to go into the building all the way through all of these reinforced beams and everything.
And the grass was fine, never scratched.
Are you kidding me? I mean, it's just...
We have 80 video cameras watching the building all the time. We don't have
80.
One speck of an image. Just give me one image of the end of the plane. That's all.
Yeah, that's...
Or maybe a fireball or whatever that was.
It's mind-blowing.
Exactly.
What do you, this might sound like a strange question, but what do you think about the other... I've heard some other theories having to do with particle beam weapons or kinetic weapons.
Look, I'll be very honest with you. Dr. Judy Wood, that put out a book, a textbook. I've read it 2 times. I'll probably read it a 3rd time. She has some excellent information there. I don't agree with everything that she says, but she has looked at this the right way. She has said, let's look at what happened. Let's just look at the facts and not draw any theories. And yes, she has seen anomalies that happened that day that are very close to what Nikola Tesla was involved with free energy technology.
Well, and right out on Long Island, you have Brookhaven National Labs with their relativistic heavy ion collider and several other things going on over there. It's a very heavy defense contracting island. So I don't know. At first I wanted to say that sounds completely crazy, but then the more you look at it, I don't know if it is really so crazy, like people say. So I just wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, people like Jesse Ventura have read the book and said, wow, this really makes sense. You know, I just go my own direction at this point, you know. And when I finished, she was the first one who told me about the bathtub that surrounded the towers, because I couldn't understand, why did the towers turn to dust? Why did we not hear us? We didn't feel large enough seismic result of the towers coming down. We're talking about 500,000 ton building. We're going to get a seismic reading. And she explains that there were no P waves or S waves that are usually in seismic readings. So she brings out an awful lot of facts. In fact, Dr. Judy Wood was the person who found out that there was a hurricane right outside of New York that day. And in the morning before the hurricane, they didn't even mention it on the weather stations. Now, the only reason she found out about it is because she wanted to see where the dust was going. So she got some Google images, and she pulled it out, and she said, what is a hurricane doing?
I was carrying it. I was carrying it.
Like the dust, yeah.
I don't know what the connection to the hurricane is, but Nikola Tesla and its free energy technology, there is a connection there.
Oh, yeah.
You know, but for the media not to mention it that day, I mean, I live in New York. When there's a thunderstorm,
They talk about it. Mm-hmm.
So a hurricane right outside of New York, they don't mention.
Very
Doesn't make
interesting.
any sense. And the hurricane was stable and stood there while this event was happening, and then after the event, it took a turn and went out. And she brings this out.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're aware, like in 2000, I think 8 maybe it was, or 7, Homeland Security was trying to get NOAA to help it with a program for steering hurricanes, and NOAA said no. Like the director said he was not going to be involved in that. So, just saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot more questions and answers always again. So.
Exactly. We have to start to pull together the dots.
What do you think about this weird bone-looking? It's the symbolism of this weird bone structure across the street.
You know, this is going to be the entrance, I think, for most of the transportation, and you know, it's sad because it's just a monument for people to forget. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I see the falls, and
Haven't seen those yet. We're heading there next.
It's a little hard to look.
I
at
think it's
because,
probably going to be.
as we know, we're being lied to see a monument to make people believe in this lie really hurts. I couldn't go there for the longest time, you know. And somebody on the internet actually said it looks like a square toilet. And I said to myself, you know what? He's almost right.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a monument to me for people who died. All we see is this void of water going down.
Yeah.
It's really rather sad.
It seems like, well, and the security guard just down the street, we asked him what this is supposed to be, and he said it is the transit, and it's supposed to symbolize a dove.
Oh boy, it looks like a dead dinosaur to me.
That's what I said. That's what I said. Well, do you have any other? Well, thank you so much for talking to us.
Hey, my pleasure.
What do you think it'll take?
You know, I think more people have to be aware of the problem. In order to get change, people have to understand there's a problem. And when people don't understand there's a problem, how could you have change?
How can you
And I
change
think,
it?
look at how many people are looking at this now, looking at the info boards.
It's good.
And so they want the information.
Well,
They want to hear about it.
Really glad that you're doing this.
Well, thank you.
I really am.
Can you
Yeah, thanks
imagine?
for still
You know,
being
there's
here.
only a few people in New York that come out and do this. Here we are in the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in the world. This is how many people.
Well, please keep doing it.
Oh, I can't stop. I drew my line in the sand. I said, this is it. I'm just going to continue. And you know, it was the people before me that really put in the work. Because back in 2006, I was afraid to talk about this. I was scared, you know, and now they laid the groundwork for me so that I can.
Literally.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much.
Guys,
talking
great
to
to
us.
meet you. Yeah, same here.